every single one of us understands what empathy is on a personal level, and that's because we are blessed with the ability to connect with other people, right? We're born with this biological power to connect with other folks, to step outside of ourselves and walk in someone else's shoes, to intuitively get where that person is coming from and get their feelings and their point of view. For an organization, having a widespread sense of empathy is to get every single person in that organization to have an intuitive sense of the people beyond their walls, for the folks who buy our products and services and who ultimately fund our 401ks, the people who actually have a stake in our success. And so we can get, not just the people in market research or marketing, but the people in R&D and finance and HR and IT and legal, everybody in a company, to have that kind of gut sense intuition for ordinary people, what we find is that companies do better as a result. The real power of empathy, and it's something that surprised us when we started looking at the topic, was yes, empathy will allow you to know things in your gut before the rest of us read about it in the Wall Street Journal. And yes, it'll give you the courage of your convictions to act on something and take a risk on something new. But the big surprise for us was how much that sense of empathy for the world around you gives people something that companies struggle with, which is to give their folks a sense of mission, to give people a reason to come into work every day. And we've seen this over and over again, that when you connect with the outside world, you suddenly realize that, wow, there's all these people out there who are counting on me to do the right thing, right? And so you start to see your business in a completely different way. Target is a great example of this, where over the last 10 years, they have stopped competing with Walmart to shave a half a cent off the cost of a bottle of detergent. They are actually creating a community, and they're creating a place where people love to go hang out. We've seen moms who leave their kids at home with their husbands and have a girls' night out on a Friday night, and they go shop at Target together. And we've seen dads on a Saturday afternoon who, are with their kids and they don't know where to take them, and there isn't a park nearby, so they go hang out in Target. In many ways, the big reset that we're going through is kind of like a back to the future. It's going back to the way that companies used to do business. But there was a time when people bought things that they needed, right, from companies that made things that had value, right? And what's happened is we've kind of let go of that as things have gotten more and more abstract, right? The financial service industry is poster child, for this. But I'm seeing a fundamental change, and it's getting back to saying, we need a gut level intuition and an empathy for people, right? So that we can actually solve their problems, because that's worth paying for. I'll give you one example, which is not in the book. I get called in to talk about innovation in companies, and I often say, okay, well, that's great. Well, I want to come in and talk about empathy. And they're often a little bit leery because they're like, hold on, that empathy stuff sounds very touchy-feely. We're IBM or we're GE. We don't talk about that. We talk about, you want to talk about innovation. That's great. And so I have to spend half an hour on the phone convincing them, no, this is important. Empathy is the key to innovation. And I remember I was giving a talk at GE to 300 marketing managers, and we were talking about, why empathy matters and how it's actually the way that you can drive growth. And at the end of the conversation, as I was leaving the building, two guys came up to me, and each of them had worked at GE for over 30 years each. Right? So these are people who had worked at GE their entire adult life. And they told me, they said, you know what, you're absolutely right. Empathy is what we need around here. We need that gut sense. We need to get back to that. And you know what? That's how we used to do business before Jack Welch. And we've just been pushing the money around ever since. So it gives me hope for GE, because it tells me there's something deeper in the DNA there than just following a stock price. But it also tells me that maybe we've gotten away from that in the last few years, that we're doing things that are good for the bottom line today, this week, rather than what's good for the company and its shareholders and its customers over the long term. When I wrote the book, I was primarily focused on the business situation, because I was looking at how companies can grow and prosper, and it seemed that empathy was the biggest differentiator. But what I've been most surprised about is how much empathy is become a larger trend, something that is being focused on at the highest levels of government even. Barack Obama has become our chief empathy officer for the country, and it's just been amazing to see. When he was at the Saddleback Ranch last year, and Rick Warren asked him, why do you want to be president? The number one reason he gave was because his grandmother had taught him the value of empathy, and he felt that that needed to be brought back to government and to America. And when he was asked to choose a Supreme Court nominee, Obama said that he was looking for someone who first and foremost had a sense of empathy. And this is a big deal. People kind of flipped out on both sides of the aisle. Like, what does he mean by empathy? Is empathy a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You have people on the right saying that, oh, by empathy, he means we want someone who's a pushover. And that's a sign of what's wrong with this country. It seems like empathy has gotten a bad rap over the last 50 years in America. We've kind of confused it with being touchy-feely or soft-minded, when what it really means is just the intuitive ability to connect with other people. And Barack gets that, and I think he's leading us to a different place. It's a sign of Obama's ability to connect with people that we don't call him President Obama. We call him Barack. The people I know refer to him by his first name, like he's one of us. Creating new markets comes from seeing the world through new eyes. It's about having a fundamentally different perspective on the way the world works. We're often looking for a reframe at Jump, right? We're looking for a fundamental shift in perspective that makes you think, wow, I thought the world worked this way, and it actually works this way. It's a completely different change. You know, in Wired to Care, I write about one of my students and those kind of reframes, and they're incredibly powerful when you get a reframe. It's like taking that pill in the movie The Matrix, and you thought the world was one thing, and then suddenly the world is all numbers, and you can't go back to the view that you had before. I had a student a couple of years ago, and we had asked him to go out and study what cleaning looked like, right? And so we had 50 of America's best and brightest, right? These are all Stanford students, and they're studying how do old people clean, and how do young people clean, and how do Latinos clean. And in the final presentation, they were doing a presentation to Clorox because they were our corporate sponsor. And this guy was up there and he was presenting how young people clean, what the world of an 18-year-old looks like, which is not a pretty picture when it comes to cleaning. Right? And he's presenting out, his story, and he's showing video. And this vice president from Clorox kind of cuts him off right in the middle and says, wait a minute. It sounds like you're telling me that people your age don't care about cleaning nearly as much as people my age, and we should forget about you. And this guy says, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that people have come to view the world through some basic frames based on whatever they've experienced in their life. And there are some people who, for whatever they experienced earlier on, view all of the world around them as being made up of durable goods, that the stuff around you will last, a table, a chair. You take care of it and you keep it looking like new because it'll be with you for a long time. And there's other people who view all of these same things as disposable goods. So if you get a scratch in a table, it's no big deal. You throw it out and you get a new table, right? So there are people with a durable good mentality and people with a disposable good mentality. And people who are the age of this vice president tend to view the world as being made up of durable things, things that last. And people who are 17 or 18 years old tend to view the world as being made up of disposable things because they're on their third personal computer by the time they're 18. They're on their fifth cell phone. And they say things to their parents like, Mom, can we get a new car? This one has a rattle in it. I mean, that's how they view the world. And then the student of mine kind of looked at the VP and said, here's the real clincher. Everything that Clorox makes, everything that you produce, speaks to the world as if it was durable. It says, keep it looking like new. Keep it looking like the day you bought it. And you have an entire generation of people coming up who think, well, why would I do that? Why wouldn't I just throw it out and get a new one? And this is a fundamental problem. It's also a fundamental reframe, for this vice president. If you think about it, she walked into the room thinking that her business was about, having a nice lemon scent and, killing bacteria and maybe cutting cleaning time in half. And here were some guys who, after studying the world, said, that's all great, but it is totally irrelevant to an entire group of people because they see the world in a different way. We buy things for wildly different reasons. We buy things because they satisfy basic needs like hunger, right, or thirst. We buy products because they make us feel good. They meet our needs of identity or needs of belonging, right? On some level, though, we buy everything because it meets some needs that we have. And I think companies have kind of gotten shy about the reasons why people buy their products. The biggest myth I have heard in corporate America is the myth of the low interest category. You'll go into a company that makes widgets and they'll say, oh, well, it's a relatively low interest category. It's something that people aren't that interested in. And so, well, our biggest, our only choice is to just slice it down and make it as cheaply as possible. I don't think that's true. I don't think there is any such thing as a low interest category. Every time we go in and we study cleaning products, and we find out that it's really about a mom caring for her children. And we study soft drinks, and we realize it's much more about kind of feeling like you have a sense of identity and a belonging with a group of people. We study engineering thermoplastics, and we discover that it's really about chemical engineers who use those thermoplastics feeling like they're competent in their job. There's always a human being and a high interest factor associated with it. I've told more than one CEO that the first thing he needed to do was to walk around his company and ask people, do you think we have a low interest product? Okay, you're fired. Right? And get rid of people who don't believe that the stuff they make can change the world, because it is changing the world whether they're noticing it or not. If I ever had a really bad boss, the only person I could point to is myself. I've been a lousy boss for myself just because I find that I'm spending a lot of time focusing on the business, and I'm probably not spending enough time, giving myself guidance and making sure that I'm continuing to learn and grow, which is what I think every boss needs to do. I mean, that's really the definition of a great boss at the end of the day, right? Is somebody who can spend time with you and figure out who you are and what's going on with you and what you're really great at, and helping to unlock that so you could become really amazing, right? And then figuring out what you're lousy at and shielding you from all of that so you can be really, at your peak potential. The bosses who figure that out become more than just bosses. They start to become leaders. They start to become the kind of folks that we kind of look to for guidance and direction in our life. When I was working in India, I worked on a project famously called Project Athena, and was all about coming up with a handheld device. It was like a handheld meter. And it was just terrible. It was supposed to take 6 months, and it took the better part of 3.5 years to make. It was supposed to be waterproof. I don't think we ever got the thing to be truly waterproof. It was supposed to sell in tens of thousands. I think we sold 5, right? And it taught me everything I know about innovation and strategy today, because every mistake that I made then has somehow played out as a big lesson today in terms of this was a product that didn't play to the strengths of the organization. This was not the right product to be made. This was something that if I had to go back and do it all over again, if someone asked me, well, like, how would you do that differently? I say, it's easy. I wouldn't do it. I would kill that product right away. It was exactly the wrong thing to make. And I think that's what people are starting to realize is coming up with new things is really hard, but figuring out what you ought to come up with is even harder. You need to find a model of innovation that works for who you are as a company and what makes you great. Both Procter & Gamble and IBM realize that what they're really good at doing is taking ideas and rolling them out. They're not even necessarily good at coming up with the idea to begin with. They're okay at that, but they're really great at rolling those ideas out. So when they come up with the idea of open innovation, they've come up with a way to say, okay, we'll get the idea from anywhere. It doesn't matter where we got it from, but let's make sure we grab those ideas and roll them out. They are doing something that plays to their strengths. That doesn't necessarily mean it plays to the strengths of their competitors. And so when their competitors start to say, well, we need an open innovation approach too, right? They're actually setting themselves up for failure because they're now trying to do something that plays to their competitors' strengths, right? So the key thing isn't about doing open innovation or closed innovation or internal innovation. It's about playing to your strengths, doing the things that you already do great and doing more of it and less of the stuff that you do poorly. Wikipedia is great because number one, it's the argument solver, right? How often have you been at a party and say, "Oh no, it's true. Life's cereal. If you put Pop Rocks on it and eat it, your stomach will explode." It's like, well, let's go actually look that up and see what the story is of that. Or what is the history of wine? Or why is a city named what it is? I find that I am often posing those random questions to myself, where I will be walking down a street and I'll say, why is this street called, what it's called? And I can look it up on Wikipedia and I can find out, and someone's actually written about it. it is a testament to the broad and varied human interest that's out there, because the fact that there's articles on everything means that there somewhere out there in the world is at least one person who is as interested in that topic as I am, even more so that they would write that article. And I think that's fascinating. It's just it's a testament to like the roving curiosity of the human species. I had I had three big ideas in 1 year, and one of which I'm patenting right now. And I'll share with you the one that is in the process of being patented. The big idea number one was that empathy was actually the source of innovation. Big idea number two was about actually coming up with an innovation dashboard to actually help companies play to their strengths by focusing on what they did well and not on stuff that they didn't do well. Big idea number three was the pug dog. And the pug dog was, I looked at the world and I thought, there's no really great ways to entertain my daughter. And you can make a dog like this, but that doesn't really look like a dog. And you can make a dog that looks like this, but that's kind of two-dimensional, and he has only one ear. And I looked around and there's no great ways to make a hand sign which looks like a dog. So I came up with one, and that's what I call the pug dog. And the way you have a pug dog is you make a fist, right? And then you lift up two sides to make the ears, and you drop down the tongue. And that's the pug dog. Patent pending.